blah, 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 blah.
Welcome to the Our Forever Smiles podcast, a podcast created to support mothers of children who were born with clefts and those who love them. I'm your host, Laura Arroyo, and I'm also a mother of a daughter who was born with a surprise cleft palate. I know the challenges you face every day, whether you have just learned the difficult news of your baby's cleft lip or palate, you're in the midst of pre-op or post-op, or you're an OG cleft mom. This podcast is for you. In a weekly conversation, we will talk about everything from feeding and speech therapy to surgery and school. We'll share tips from guest experts and advocates and even share a little joy in the process. You can listen to Our Forever Smiles wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the Our Forever Smiles, Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. I am Laura Arroyo. Thank you to all of our subscribers, new and old. I appreciate all of the support that we've received from this wonderful community. You can listen to us via Apple, Spotify, and everywhere that podcasts are available. Don't forget to subscribe if you have not yet, and stay tuned. Just as a note, we are not medical doctors, and we do not intend for you to use the information that we share here as medical advice. We're parents and advocates who love our children, and we're sharing our own personal experiences. So I guess I'm going to have like a series of these episodes where I'm under the weather because as you can hear in my voice, I am still not feeling well. But I'm just kind of like moving through it. I actually kept Giselle at home the first year of her life because I wanted to make sure that she was okay. But at the year mark, she went to daycare. And of course, as we all know, daycares are infestation sites. So I am, she's bringing home all sorts of viruses and things like that. And so this time it got me, but I'm doing well. And I'm just like glad that it's not as bad as it could be. But yeah, so excited for this episode today. We have a guest. Katie is here to talk about her son, her first child, Dylan. She's a part-time oncology nurse and a part-time stay-at-home mom. And she's been married for 5 years. So welcome, Katie.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. It's so good to have you on the podcast today. Where are you from?
I'm from San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, nice. Oh, I love that. I love Texas. Texas was actually one of the places that I was going to move before I moved to North Carolina, but not San Antonio. Although San Antonio is like super, is beautiful. I have a friend that lives in Dallas, and there's just a lot of opportunity in Texas. I feel there's lots of jobs and stuff. So that was definitely number one on my list, but I decided to come here to North Carolina. So yeah. So I really am excited to talk to Katie today because she has had an interesting journey with her first child, Dylan. And so I just wanted to start off just by asking, when did you find out you were pregnant? How was that journey like in becoming pregnant and that sort of thing? Let's talk about day one.
So I found out I was pregnant with Dylan in February of 2022. It was kind of a strange feeling. Dylan was our fourth pregnancy. We had 3 pregnancies before. We lost all of them. So it was a strange feeling, you're happy, but you're also scared. And I guess we just felt like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? We kind of went in, well, my mom always says, cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
So it was not the typical, finding out you're pregnant. We kind of struggled with for about 2 years. We were trying.
Yeah.
So we got lucky and he stuck. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that about your previous pregnancies. I feel like dealing with loss is like really difficult, and just like the uncertainty of you knowing if it's ever gonna happen, right? Like, no, not just the unknown of not knowing if you're ever going to be able to have a child is just kind of I feel like a different type of grief, you know. And so did you were you miscarriaging like early on in pregnancy, or what was
It was
that experience?
pretty early on. Yeah,
Yeah.
our first was about 6 weeks,
Hmm.
and our second one was kind of a little bit harder. It was about 10 weeks. So we were
Yeah.
getting really close to that, safer zone, and that one we actually found out had trisomy 13. So genetic stuff on the mind, like, so that was another thing that we kind of were thinking about. Our third one was very early on, and then we were actually getting ready to go to IVF. We were meeting with my doctor to talk about the next steps in transferring to IVF doctor. She was just like, I just feel like y'all should try one more time.
Oh.
Did, and I,
Ah. Oh my goodness, that like gives me chills. It's like just
yeah.
thinking about it. Now, like after each devastating, miscarriage, did you all like continue to try right away? Like, I just kind of put myself in your shoes, and I just feel like I don't like it'd be so hard for me to kind of like, I don't know, like to say it simply, right, is like get back in the game, like to get
Right.
back into this thing, and like to have to deal with another heartbreak is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So we, after our first, we waited a while, like, several months. There was a certain amount of time our doctor wanted us to wait anyways, and then it just kind of felt like, like, can we handle this again? Like right now, we didn't want to just jump into it because we were like, we wanted this right now. We were like, we need to be, not that you ever really like heal from it, but a little bit
Yeah.
more,
Hmm.
like stable. And so the first one we did wait a while, like probably about 9. The second one, between the second and third, a few months, and then between the third and Dylan, it was very long. It was only about a month. My doctor
Yeah.
was like, just let's just keep going. And by that point, we were like, almost, it's gonna sound like kind of strange, but we were almost like numb to it, and it was like, well,
Yeah.
let's just try it so we can just keep moving on. And it was a very strange, strange thing to be happy every time, but also like sad at the same time and scared. And
Yeah.
it was a very strange journey.
Yeah, I think it's like feeling out, like just figuring out what you think will work, right? Like, it's just like what you said your mom said, it's like cautiously optimistic. You have to, like, you can't just kind of like give up on yourself. And so, yeah. And so with Dylan, when you finally found out that you were pregnant, was there any like, I guess, between the time that you found out that you were pregnant and the time that you found out about his cleft, did you have any sense of relief, or was it always like any day, something could happen to him?
So I did feel that a lot, but I will say, like, between like the 13-week mark and then when I found out, I was pretty like, I was still scared for every time we went in, but my doctor was monitoring us like really closely, and I found out about his cleft at our 20-week anatomy scan. And so
Mm,
for about like 7 weeks, I felt pretty good. I think,
yeah.
like, still scared, but once we got past that like 13-week point, I was like, okay, maybe this one is actually going to stick, but it also didn't feel real.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, so you said your 20-week scan is the when you found out about his cleft. And so can you tell me about that day? Like, what did you go in by yourself?
No, my husband was there.
Okay.
So,
And how did they I guess deliver this news to you? Did they tell you same day?
yes. So actually, when the anatomy scan, they're checking everything, fingers, toes, all that. So it was, a long scan. I'm sure you probably know, but um, I actually like they have this big TV in there and we could see everything. And the tech kept going to his face. And I kept seeing, like, you can see the kind of white of their body and everything. And there was a little gap, like where his nose and his lip were. And I kept seeing it, and she kept going back and taking more and more pictures of his face. And so I was like, oh, like something doesn't look right. Like, I felt like I knew when we were in there, but I also, being in the medical field, I know that a tech is not going to be able to tell. And so I didn't ask. I didn't want to be like, is that a cleft lip? Because they would probably just say, oh, your doctor will talk to you. So I didn't want to put anybody in like a uncomfortable situation. And then I also didn't want to like jump the gun in case, because that's not my, field of expertise. So I was like, it could just be normal. I could just be totally, in my head and everything. So, but we found out, his brain, his heart, all his organs, everything else looked good. And so I felt good, but we got sent back out to the waiting room, which is like standard for my doctor. You do the scan, then you go wait, and then, for a few minutes, go see the doctor to talk about it. So luckily, we got to have answers that same day. But we were in the waiting room. I asked my husband, I was like, did you see his face? Like, did you notice that? And he was like, well, yeah, I mean, I kind of saw something, but I'm sure it's nothing. I was like, I think he has a cleft lip. And he was
I wouldn't be able to like resist. You all were quiet in the office? Like, I would have been like, oh my God, husband, do you see that?
Yes.
I can't believe you all stayed quiet. Like, I would have like been like chapping like,
yeah.
But I guess it's also just the nerves, right? Like just the like, and so, but when you saw it, did you, I don't know, because I was in complete shock when I learned about my daughter's cleft. And so did you know what it was when you saw it? Like, or like, did you say, oh, that's a cleft?
I kind of thought, just because I had seen him before, and what I was really was on like the forefront of my mind was trisomy 13 was our second baby had that, and a cleft can present itself in trisomy 13. It's, obviously it can be a standalone issue, which is what it is, I think, in most cases.
Yeah.
But I was just looking for like any abnormality I could see, and we had done the like genetic testing, like, from my blood samples, and everything was low risk. And he had only, 10 fingers and 10 toes. Everything else looked normal. So I was pretty like confident that it was going to be okay. But I think the reason I like noticed it was because I was just like staring at everything, like trying to make sure there was nothing. And I kept telling myself, like, maybe I just saw it wrong. Maybe for some reason, maybe his hand was in his face or something. And sure enough, they called us back, and we love my doctor so much. She's been there for us from the beginning, and she just like came out and said it. She was just like, okay, well, everything, looks good. The only small thing is that he has a cleft. And I was like, that's not small. What do you mean?
Yeah.
But then she did tell us, she was like, I know that this is not what you want to hear, but she was like, in y'all's case and what y'all have been through and what could be going on with y'all, like, this is, we can deal with this. Like, we can make this work. But my husband, was like, he handles things differently than I do. So he's like making jokes and like trying to lighten the mood. But I cried for days. Like, just,
oh, wow.
I cried probably the rest of the pregnancy.
I was the same. I was a crybaby. But it's so funny that you say like about your husband making jokes. My brother actually was the one that was like, okay, we're like, she can, bring a noodle between her mouth and her nose, and like, it's like America's Got Talent, like, and I'm like, no, like, it's not okay. They're all, it goes back to that whole thing. And I think, you mentioned that. I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth as we, get more into this conversation. But, just that mentioning that it's not like the easiest fix. It's not just like a cosmetic thing. It's like, it's not easy. And it should be, not looked at in that way, but also it's a balance between like knowing that you can get through it and also, but just like validating their experience is one of the things that I've like learned from talking to a lot of people and just like learning about my own journey, like going through it myself. It's like, how do I validate her experience while also like, being strong and knowing that like I can do anything as her mom. And so you mentioned, talking to your husband about this, and he was a little lighthearted about it. When did you decide to tell your extended family?
We actually called him that like drive home basically because I was just like bawling and he was like, my mom and I are really close. He's like, your mom,
Oh, yeah.
we'll talk to her, and then we call his parents, and because since we had been through so much of this, like calling and hey, we're pregnant, hey, we're pregnant, we kind of just became a routine thing of we called them after every appointment and we were like, hey, things are still good, or and so it was kind of just our routine, like after appointments we would call them, and so it just kind of felt like natural to just call and tell them like right away. Of course everybody was like, I don't want to say like devastated for us, but just they felt for us, but they also knew that we could handle it. And my mom always said like, God, the universe, whoever knew that we wanted a baby so bad and that a baby like this needed somebody who was really, really going to be there. And
Yeah.
so it was just, it just kind of seemed like at the time, honestly, I felt like, why can't we catch a break?
Yeah.
It's like one thing after the next. And
Yeah.
I was less heartbroken for us, but more for him. I was scared of what he was going to go through.
Yeah. Did you learn his gender during that time as well?
We had learned when we did the genetic testing.
Okay.
We had done the like blood tests, but it was confirmed during that time. So
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I feel like we had a Cleft Mom question on the podcast before that talked about like navigating those feelings of like anger as well. Like it's like you get people that say like, okay, well it's not as bad, right? And like it's okay, or they're like kind of their approach, well-meaning people, right? Their approach is just like try to make you feel better about it. And so
yeah,
there was a question about how to like handle feelings like that. It's like, yeah, you're right, but I also, you're right. Like my child was, born with a cleft, and yes, I can handle it, but I also like, they also could have not been born with a cleft,
right.
and so it's one of those things that, we have to like navigate those feelings of just being like, why me, almost like, why do we have to go through this? And especially when you feel like you're good people or you feel like you do the right things. And so, yeah, that definitely has to be really challenging. And so what was your experience in your pregnancy from that point on? I know that you mentioned being really emotional till the time that I assume that you gave birth, and probably a little afterwards too, because
Yeah.
I was. I feel like I was crazier after than during, but but what was your experience like up until you gave birth? Did you have to do like additional visits and that type of thing?
Yeah, so they sent us to a high risk doctor who followed us after that. The main reason was just because they have better imaging, and so we went basically just to confirm. But after that, we followed them still, and mostly like for the just in case the genetic issues side, But we had him tested when he was born, but I had high risk doctor appointments as well. And then we actually, I will say the good thing about finding out early on was that we were able to meet with his surgeon before he
Mm,
was born. And
yes.
so I think that really helped, and I got to end up feeling like prepared, and as prepared as you can be. I know you can't really like fully know because all these babies are so different, but
Yeah.
I was very thankful that we got to meet his surgeon. a lot of time and middle of the nights spent on Google trying to find,
Yes.
we would go to like a one of our highest doctor's appointments, and they would measure, in millimeters his cleft, and I'd be on Google. Like his cleft was 5 millimeters, so I'd be typing in 5 millimeter Google or 5 millimeter cleft baby, like, trying to find what he would look like. And I
Yeah.
was like obsessing over like, is it going to be really big, like really wide, or is it going to be like small, or is that, I was
Yeah.
obsessing over all these things. And actually I share some of his stuff on like Instagram and TikTok and stuff because of that, because I would go on every single like social media you could think of, and I would type in hashtag Cleft baby because I was just
Yeah.
trying to find anything like
Yeah.
anything that I could find. And I really only found like this one mom who was sharing a little bit about her son, and anytime I was feeling like down, I would just go look back at her stuff because I was like, oh my gosh, he's so adorable and he's so happy, and like,
Yeah.
it's okay, it's gonna be okay. But I would say, it was a lot of doctor's appointments, and then a lot of worrying,
Yeah.
like talking late at night to my husband or my mom or whoever, like, well, do you think, what if this happens, or what if that, or what if this? And they're like, no one knows, we're just gonna have to take it day by day. And so
Yeah. That's actually one of the reasons I started this podcast, is because of the lack of information, the lack of stuff, like really the lack of, I don't even know how to phrase this, like the lack of like normal information, I guess. Like, I guess I just didn't see it in like everyday people, like quote unquote, like, it's like I was seeing it in, the messaging around cleft lip and cleft palate is that it's like a third world issue. And that's where you get information. You can get great information from there, but it's like so scary. And so that is like the real reason, because I wanted to provide like a platform for moms and other people who are like experiencing this to like be able to go to just like get information, like straight up information from everyday people. And so I was just so shocked that there wasn't really anything like this. And obviously, the conditions are like rare and stuff like that, but I just feel like it's so important and so needed within our community. But it's really interesting that you talk about the measurement and like comparing like the ultrasound to like what, your baby will look like when they're born, and then I'm pretty sure you looked at what they look like post-op, you know what I mean? Like that type of thing, because that's what I would do. And so what, I love that. I can even like get chills just thinking about like the question I'm going to ask you, but just in all that you did your research when you first saw him, what was that experience like?
it was like none of the past few months mattered. It was like, oh my God, I'm like gonna cry thinking about it.
I'm even going to cry, and he's not my son.
That's like one of the biggest things that I try to tell people, and it's hard because until you experience that moment, you like,
Yeah.
like, because I would see people say like, oh, it's not gonna matter, like, when they're here, but I was like, but I'm so worried, like people are gonna be so mean, and they're gonna say like things about him, and they're gonna think this, they're gonna think that. And he was born, I took a look at him, and I was like, I don't even care what anybody else thinks. He is perfect. He is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, it was like a complete switch. I went from being like so sad and so like, just heartbroken in a way, like for him and what he'd have to go through. And I still am. I know he's going to go through a lot,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But once I saw him, I was just like, gosh, like, you're perfect. I don't care about anything else. Like,
Yeah.
it was just,
Yeah.
wow.
That's got to be like such a beautiful moment. And so, has Dylan had surgery yet?
He has. He's had 2.
He's had
So,
both the lip and palate repair. Okay. And so, wow. Okay. So, in just like thinking of that though, for his like post-op, I know it's like, I know a lot of moms talk about like grieving the post-op smile. Was that something that you experienced as well?
I did, yeah. Leading up to it too, it's so crazy because I cried during pregnancy because he was going to have a cleft, and then I cried before his surgery because he wasn't going to have a cleft. And so it's like a roller coaster. It really
Yeah.
is. But I cried for a couple days beforehand. I'm just like kind of I was so in love with his cleft and everything, and I knew he was going to look different. And then I cried when I saw him, like, first of all, because it's your baby waking up from surgery, but also because it's your baby, but it doesn't look like your baby. And you're just like, I know it's you, and I'm holding you, I know it's you, but you look so different. And I did cry, and I was feeling guilty for crying. I felt like, how could I cry over something that's bettering his life,
Yeah.
very, very like complicated mix of emotions, I guess. But my mom had told me before the surgery, when I was like, I wish we didn't have to fix it. I wish we could just leave him the way he is. He's perfect. My mom would say, if he was old enough to decide for himself, for a fact that he would get it fixed.
Oh, that's a great point of view. Yeah.
And I was like,
yes.
But he is like a big time daddy's boy. And so that same day, we took him home because we got to go home. Some of them have to stay, but we got to go home that same day for the lip. We stayed for the palate, but my husband was holding him and rocking him and talking to him and stuff, and he got him to smile again. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like, it was this really crazy moment because, like, my husband always says, like, we're very lucky because we got to see our son's first smile twice, because he had his first cleft smile and then he had his first non-cleft smile.
Yeah.
It was a very, difficult time, like these crazy emotions and like feeling sad but happy and guilt and scared, and it's a lot. But I definitely can understand when people say that, they grieve the smile, because I definitely felt that, which I thought it was like when I was pregnant, I couldn't wait. Like, I was told he'd have surgery around like 12, 13 weeks. And I was like, oh, I can't wait till we get there so we can just, put it behind us and keep going.
Yeah.
And then it was like, that came way too fast.
Yeah. And then not expecting to feel that way too.
Right.
I think that's really interesting. And so you mentioned they did like outpatient for his lip?
Yes. Yeah. I was very surprised. I was like, are you sure? And yeah. And I have like, I'm on a couple like, cleft groups, and most of them stay. And so I asked the surgeon, I was like, we're going to go home? Like, and he's like, yeah, it's just the lip. I was like, well, but like a lot, like that hurt. But he did great. He, Tylenol, Motrin. Actually, he couldn't have Motrin. He was too little, but Tylenol, that was it. And he did fine. He was like smiling the next day. Like,
yeah.
I was very surprised that I was like, you're letting me take him home? He just had surgery. What do you mean?
Yeah. And so how was his recovery at home for his lip revision?
It was good. It was pretty good. He had to have a nose stent in one side, and he did not like that. That would get like clogged up, and he did not like the no-nos. I'm sure y'all had to use those probably.
Yeah.
Arm restraints. He did not like those, but we pretty much were with him the whole time. So we would use a swaddle to hold his arms in instead of the no-nos. And it was hard because it looked worse than it, I think, was. Like,
yeah, the swelling a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was extremely swollen, extremely bruised, but it didn't seem to bother him too much. He did pretty well. He ate pretty well still. We didn't have a whole lot of, difficulties with.
Yeah. It's really interesting with my daughter, and we'll talk about Dylan's palate repair as well, but with her, first of all, she hated the no-nos, so because she's a thumb sucker, which was like, yeah. And maybe I'm a terrible and good mom, I guess. because I didn't want to wean her. I felt like it was all that she had. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I can't breastfeed. I can't, like,
Yeah.
And so, and Giselle is only palate affected. And so I'm like, this is the only thing she has. Like, I just let her have it, And so she hated the no-nos, but I just like watched her every time she would try to put her thumb in her mouth. But the one thing I was really surprised about too with her palate repair is that she like came out with like black eyes. And I didn't expect that. Like, not like full on, but like right here, like, for the audience, I'm just pointing like under my eyes, like where my sinuses are. But yeah, so I wasn't expecting that. And I was like, you look like you just been in a fight, But same, she bounced back very well. And it just goes to show like how much more resilient they are than we are. Like she was already wanting to like eat, soft foods like the second or third day. And so I was kind of like breaking all the rules with her, but it's, we made it. So here we are. But how was your palate repair experience? And what age did you do lip revision and palate repair?
We ended up doing the lip revision at about 4 months. He was like just a couple days shy of 4 months because he was supposed to do around 3, but he took a little longer to meet the weight requirement. So we got him there about 4 months. And then his palate repair was about 10 months. And that one was a little bit harder for us. That one we did stay in the hospital overnight. And he did great in the hospital. He was like drinking all his milk and like, just doing really well. And then we took him home and he just like started refusing everything.
Oh,
we were having to like, it was crazy. I know. I was like, you tricked us. We should have stayed another night.
Maybe he was mad. I don't know.
Something. He was something, but he was like, we would try to syringe feed him because he stopped taking the bottle. Our surgeon let us use a bottle with the Dr. Brown's bottle with the blue disc in it still. And we tried the open flow sippy cups. He wouldn't take them. So we just tried syringe feeding him and he would just like glue his mouth shut. Like we could not anything in him. And then I finally found out, like, I don't even know how we figured it out, but I had a bunch of frozen breast milk and he liked it like a slushy kind of.
Oh, yeah.
So it was so strange. I'd have to sit and just like hand feed him like little bits of frozen breast milk. Like,
it was probably like comforting or something.
Yeah, but I had to make sure it was like small enough pieces to where it would melt instantly and not like poke up through his stitches and stuff. Yeah. So it was just, it took us a few days to figure that out though. So he was for a little while not looking very good. We were going to take him back in. He was just like.
Yeah, now that I think, maybe he was just really sore. Like you have like an injury and then, the initial like stinging happens, but then eventually you just get sore, like really sore. And maybe that's what happened. But yeah, that can be really scary. I know that my Cleft team, and we're in North Carolina, they were adamant about her coming off of the bottle before surgery. And they're like, open cup. And we were fine with that because, whatever helps her development anyway. Like, I'm not trying to rush her or anything, but it's not like a bad thing to have her off of the bottle. I don't know. I feel like some people get so up in arms about that.
Yeah.
But, and so we tried and we did have her like, she was doing okay with the open cup. But then after surgery, my surgeon, God bless her, I love her so much. She goes, yeah, and she's okay to use the bottle. And I'm like, there's so much stress and so much like, what do you mean? You literally have been preaching this whole time about how she can't use the bottle. And so I don't know, whenever I see like questions online about that, I'm like, sometimes, if I feel like commenting or I have time to comment, I'm like, sometimes, it's good to get them trained for open cup, but sometimes they just tell you that for worst case scenario.
That's actually like exactly what happened to us because we had been told from the beginning, like before his palate surgery, he has to be on an open cup or open flow, like sippy cup, so we were working for months with him and he was just not like, he would do it, but he didn't really want to. And so
Yeah.
we're getting closer to the surgery, and we're like, oh man, like we're gonna just have to like cut him off like cold turkey a couple weeks before, sometimes like, and then we went to our last appointment like maybe like 1 or 2 weeks before the palate surgery, and I was like talking to the speech therapist, and I was like, yeah, we're working on the cup, but he's still, not really doing
Yeah.
well. But she was like, oh no, like, yeah, he always says like they can't be on the bottle, but he means the regular bottle. They can be on the bottle with the
What?
blue disc. And I was like,
What? We know that
what
already.
is his regular bottle? Like, we just stressed for
Yeah.
months and months about this. So that's like exactly what happened to us.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Yeah. And so just rewinding for a second. So the Dr. Brown's bottle worked really well for you all. And were you all, I guess before Dylan was born, did you like go ahead and stock up on all these things, or like what kind of research did you do for like his feeding or like a plan for that?
Yeah, so I had bought Dr. Brown bottles. I didn't realize though that they needed the blue disc. So I had just a bunch of like regular ones.
Yeah.
And then I had bought, I can't remember the other, there's like a couple other Cleft ones, like a pigeon bottle, I think. I don't remember if it's Modelo. There's another one. There were like 3 of them that I had heard of. So I bought all 3. I took them all to the hospital, and then they ended up sending in a speech therapist to help him learn how to eat. And she brought us a Dr. Brown's bottle with the blue disc. And she's like, these things are like gold. Don't lose them. Like,
yeah.
And then I ended up getting more for the ones that we had like at home. But so I guess that's the thing. It's like I felt like I was so prepared, but I ended up not having the right stuff. And so I was like, oh yeah, I have a ton of Dr. Brown's bottles. She's like, oh, did you get the one with the blue disc? I was like, the what?
You're like, what blue disc? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with us, of course I had no idea until she was born. So I was so not prepared. And she actually did better with the pigeon bottle.
Really?
And so, yeah, she did wonderful on that one. The Dr. Brown's bottle was a little too slow for her. I don't know, like maybe I didn't know how to put it together. I don't know what it was, but I couldn't get it to like work. She just needed a higher flow, which is the pigeon bottle has a higher flow, and she loved it, and we stuck with it, and that was just like pretty much it. But I do see also like people online as well asking for those blue discs, and they were like, our Cleft team had so many of them. I actually still had them, like, because since we tried the Dr. Brown's first and then we moved on to the pigeon, I have tons of them. So sometimes I don't have them anymore, but I was inclined to say like, hey, like I have these blue discs and stuff. And, if you need them, I guess because some people are at like smaller hospitals. And so they don't necessarily have access to that, but they were like, take as many as you want, which was like really a blessing for us. They were so supportive in that. So what is something that you wish people knew about children with cleft lip and palate just in general?
I wish that more people knew, really what all goes into it and what all it can affect, because I'm going to be honest, like I didn't know going into it. I really thought it was just, I knew it was, the palate that's not cosmetic, right?
Yeah.
I thought the lip was cosmetic, and then the palate was just once it's fixed. And I think a lot of people think that. And so I remember we were told a lot, we still get told a lot, like, oh, at least that's an easy fix. Like they could, like, that's nothing, like,
Yeah.
And I know, like, compared to some of the things that could have happened, and that some of the things that, like, other children go through, I know that I'm thankful that it's not, something life-threatening, but, I think about it and I'm like, 100 years ago, it probably was, and so
yeah,
we're lucky that they have these advances today. But I remember the first time we went to our cleft surgeon, we were meeting him for the first time, and I was thinking like, oh yeah, they get it fixed when they're little, like, and then he's like, this is just our specific surgeon. I don't know if it's like that for everybody, but
yeah,
we do, lip surgery when he's 3 months, palate surgery when he's 10 months, then around 5 years, a nose correction. They take cartilage from his ear, put it in his nose if he needs it. Then the 8 years is the bone graft. And
Mm-hmm.
then, and that's like a big one.
Yeah.
They're going to take, bone from his hip, put it in his gums. And then I think it was 17 is like a jaw surgery if he needs it. 18 is like another nose surgery. But I didn't realize he'd be having surgeries until he's like an adult, basically.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That it affects their ears, it can affect their like, nose, like the sinuses, and
Mm-hmm.
just speech, eating, like even breathing for some of them. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, I wish that more people knew it's not just this simple little plastic surgery, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, I think gonna be years of like speech therapy and like lots of stuff.
Yeah, lots
So
of lots of different things. I find like that everyone's heart is different. And what do you feel like has been like the hardest part of your journey?
I think just seeing him struggle a little bit, and he really does great. Like, I really think that he's really tough, and he's like, advancing so much stuff. But I think the hardest part has been seeing him like come out from surgery, having to go through that. And I both times before, I was like crying, like, he has no idea what we're about to do to tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yes.
and in a way I know that's better because he's not nervous and whatever. But I think that's been the hardest part to me, is watching him go through pain,
Yeah.
and feeling like there's not really much I can do except for, comfort him, of course, but there's not something that I can do to keep him from having to go.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's a big one.
What's hard.
That's a big one. So we've talked about a lot today, and I think like you've answered a lot of questions, just in general, from like what a new mom would want to know, like, especially like with the ultrasound stuff. So every week we typically have a Cleft question of the week. And so the question for this week is, what questions should I ask my Cleft team before choosing to work with them?
So I definitely think, who they have access to, like who is in your, surgeons, dentists, speech therapists, ENTs, like who all are they going to want you to, stay with? Because it's not just the surgeon that's important, it's the whole team, just seeing who all they include in their, quote unquote team. And so I think kind of what their plan is, and if they plan on following the whole time.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because to me, what I like about our team is that, he can go there until his surgeon retires, move on to somebody else. So there's no like cutoff for him, like, oh yeah, okay, well, once you turn this age, that's it, you got to go find your own new team or whatever. And I asked too, like, if the things like, because these were things that were like important to me, like, do they care about like, his pain, like his pain management, is that going to be important to them? Like,
like what's their approach?
Right. Yes. And are they going to be available to me after surgeries if I need them? Or is it like a surgery and then, okay, now go to your pediatrician, I wanted somebody who would like follow us, like, and we weren't just a surgery to them. Like, they'll be there in the days after surgery, helping with any questions we have. Are they going to be available if an issue arises and you need to call somebody or send a message or something like that? Because I have heard of some, where they do the surgery and it's kind of it. And so I think just how closely are they going to be with you, like in this ride? Because it's a lot.
Yeah. And you'd be so surprised, like how how different it is from team to team. I think generally doctors typically follow the same like structure, but I've seen like so many different things online that have like, I don't know, just made me question things a little bit. Like it's really important to be very direct and to ask these questions. Like I second that. One of the things that I was really concerned about with palate repair was the likelihood of a fistula. And so because I just wanted to minimize her getting any additional surgeries. So I would ask questions about that as well. And then, like you said, like, are there any, like, are you going to like stay with us through this, through this journey, at least for the first half of it, right? Like, I think that that's really, really important because, you build that relationship and that rapport with them and you're trusting them with your child, at such a vulnerable, like early stage in their lives. And they're going to go under for, the anesthesia. And that, I don't know, like to me, I just feel like it's just such like, so hard to think about. And just even that process of like handing your baby over is like, you want to be able to trust your team and to ask all the questions that will ensure that you feel like you trust them once that day comes. So I usually ask, my last question is always, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned along your journey? But I'm actually going to change it this time, and don't kill me. I want to ask you, what is something that you wish people knew about Dylan?
I wish that they knew just how tough he really is. Like he is just, he is like a little fireball. He's been through a lot, and they really all have. I think people see him and they see, the happy, silly boy and everything, and they don't always see the moments where he's having a hard time, where he's in pain, things like that. But he's a little rock star. He gets through it. So I think he's just, I don't know, I just think he's just like the world.
Yeah. I can only imagine that. So yeah, I just want to thank you, Katie, so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And just thank you all for listening to the Our Forever Smiles Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. Be sure to subscribe and submit a review of the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. I hope that you've enjoyed this audio experience. Maybe you cried a little, laughed a little, but more importantly, I hope that you feel a little piece of reassurance and even joy in your journey. Talk to you next week.